The lawsuit between the band Led Zeppelin and the band Spirit. That whole lawsuit that's been going on since 2014, reopened multiple times through appeals and other nonsense, is finally concluded in the favor of Led Zeppelin, and rightfully so. This band Spirit sued the band Led Zeppelin, saying that they essentially copied the opening lick to the most popular rock and roll song of all time, Stairway to Heaven, aka what I have dubbed and has been widely adopted as the forbidden riff. And the reason it's forbidden, well, to quote the great cartoon of my childhood, The Rugrats, from Angelica Pickles,
"If you have to ask, you'll never know."
By the way, J.K. Rowling repurposed that quote in Harry Potter and somehow became the one who got credit for that quote. Maybe there'll be a copyright problem there. Anyway, there's a couple reasons I wanted to make this video. It's going to be a little ranty, I might warn you. I don't often rant, but first I'm going to get into why this lawsuit was silly to begin with. I've gone into it in past videos, but this will just be a quick summary for you. First, let me play you the two riffs in question side by side, and that way you can hear exactly what caused this whole lawsuit in the first place. This is Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin. Now that this video cannot be monetized, check out Guitar Super System. It's linked right down below. It's my guitar learning platform for guitar players of all skill levels. Here is the song Taurus by Spirit. Now, it's important to understand context. This is where the Led Zeppelin song goes next. Here is where the Spirit song goes next. Goes back to the home riff. So that is way different than, obviously, the Led Zeppelin song. So here is the reason that I knew this lawsuit was bogus to begin with. And this is a common theme in a lot of big lawsuits in the music industry. The claim was filed by someone who wasn't in the band. It was filed by a trustee of the band. In other words, somebody who has nothing to do with the actual artistic integrity, somebody who wants money. To give you exact details, I didn't memorize this crap. Michael Skidmore is the name of the person who filed this original lawsuit in 2014. The guitarist for Spirit, named Randy Wolf, died in 1997. He had nothing to do with this lawsuit, but Michael Skidmore, who is a journalist appointed as a co-trustee of the Randy Wolf Trust Fund, essentially, is the one who filed this lawsuit and wanted to get a big old payday from the most popular rock and roll song ever made. Now, the problematic and fishy side on the Led Zeppelin part of the argument is Led Zeppelin's lawyer didn't allow the two songs to be played side by side in the court. The Spirit song was filed under an earlier Copyright Act that only protected sheet music. So they were basically comparing the sheet music of Stairway to Heaven versus the sheet music of Taurus. And obviously the notes are different. There are some similarities, obviously, the A minor triad with the descending chromatic bass line, but overall the pieces of music go in drastically different directions, and there isn't enough there to be problematic from a sheet music perspective. However, if you do play them side by side, the layperson will be like, oh, that sounds the same, and they do. But this is the issue that we keep coming back to with these copyright claims in the major court systems. The legal team of Spirit claimed what's called the inverse ratio rule, where if you can prove the alternate party had access to your musical work at any point, then anything that sounds similar that they may have come up with, in other words, these two songs in question, that drastically lowers the amount of proof and technical accuracy you have to have in order to win your claim. So basically, if Led Zeppelin ever heard a Spirit song and wrote anything mildly similar to it, then they wouldn't have to really prove anything other than, hey, those two sound the same. He must have ripped it off from us. He couldn't have possibly come up with it by himself. As you can see, this is highly problematic because now especially, and this is what the court got right and why Led Zeppelin won the case, we have access to everything all the time. So this notion that you can hear something at some point and all of a sudden, since you potentially had access to it, then you must have copied it. Well, that's impossible to not only govern, but also it's just doesn't make any sense. And to quote the Ninth Circuit, which is the court that this lawsuit rose to, they said, "This is not part of the copyright statute because it defies logic and creates uncertainty for the courts and the parties." Yeah, defying logic is not necessarily a strong thing to be happening in a court of law. Logic is important. I think that the main point that Spirit was trying to make was that, hey, Led Zeppelin, you copied this. That's what they claimed to have copied in an arpeggiated form. Now I just want to point out there's a part in the Spirit song that goes like this. You know what that sounds a lot like? Blackbird by the Beatles. I'm just confused that they don't seem to have any competent musicians involved in these lawsuits to point things out that are just obvious. It's cherry picking in order to get a payday. The Beatles wanted to, they could make almost an identical claim against Spirit because of the diatonic descending chord thing that happened right there. But the point is the context of the song, that they realize, hey, that's just, you know, a very common musical happening. It's not yours. It cannot be copyrighted. You can't copyright harmony, and especially influence. You can't necessarily say, oh, well, that blues lick, that person played that blues lick, that's my blues melody. I mean, how many times have you heard this? Imagine if every blues guitar player tried to copyright that little moment. It's just ridiculous that it could have gone to these lengths and this amount of money had to be spent in order to resolve something that was ultimately so obvious to anyone who is musically inclined and in this industry who isn't money hungry. Time and again, these people who control estates are the ones kind of tarnishing the legacy of those who they represent. It just needs to be a little harder to just file lawsuits, I think. There needs to be a higher degree of difficulty and more proof required before this stuff can happen. The Ed Sheeran Marvin Gaye lawsuit. Marvin Gaye's estate made that claim. Marvin Gaye's estate. The people who don't have talent, who just want the money. They made the claim, just like in this case where it was a trustee that made the claim, not the band. It's a lot like a publishing group where these publishers go on YouTube and try and make all these copyright claims in any situation they can find. These are money-hungry people with no talent. They leech on those with talent and try and take, and really offer nothing. If you think about it, what is the point of a publishing group? They don't actually have any artistic ability, and it's really kind of a weird thing that they have to resort to going into the annals of YouTube and, you know, in this case, lawsuits, filing lawsuits that are completely illegitimate and trying to get an extra buck. Maybe they're angry that people like me can make more in a week than artists on their roster make in a year. I don't know what it is, but the whole culture of, hey, I think I see a spot where I can possibly game the system, because the system is not only kind of flooded, but also ill-equipped to deal with nuanced things such as music. And I think we've seen that time and again with these silly lawsuits. And the one positive, I think, to come out of this is the fact that Led Zeppelin did win. And the courts did overturn the whole inverse ratio rule that lowers the burden of proof in lawsuits like this. They've gotten rid of that. They've said, yeah, that's an old law and it makes no sense, especially in today's culture and the internet and things like this. So that's a positive. The next step would be, you know, actually making it so bigger corporations that have seemingly endless funds to bully artists and creators into succumbing to their will, that needs to be addressed. And I'm not the only person who's spoken on this. There are plenty of other people in the YouTube community who feel the same way, not even just in music, but in the creative culture in general. The more people kind of work for themselves, the better they can make it for themselves, but also the harder it is to deal with the older school corporation machine. So I don't have a solution. If I did, I would let you know, but maybe one will come if enough people speak up about things like this and spread the awareness. I hope this was an interesting video to watch. I hope it didn't come off like a crybaby or a whiner. I love music. I really like Led Zeppelin. I might be biased, I'll say that. Even though their publishing group copyrighted my most popular video of all time when I didn't actually play the entire Forbidden Riff. It's called Playing the Forbidden Riff in a Huge Guitar Store. Somebody manually processed the claim, and basically what that means is somebody went through. There wasn't an algorithm that detected the composition. Somebody went in there and said, hey, you're definitely about to play our riff, so we're going to copyright it, and I can't do anything about it because if I file against them and inevitably lose, then I get a copyright strike and that affects me. So there are some problems, but I can't do anything about it right now. Maybe in time. Thanks for watching. Keep shredding.